Hello and welcome to, believe it or not, I know the number. I've realised in the top of the screen, it tells me what episode number I'm on. And I'm on episode 19. So who knew that would happen so quickly? And today I'd like to introduce a very special guest, Morgan. Hi, Morgan.
Hi.
So
Hi,
before we
everybody.
start, what's your username so people can find you?
Yeah, so it is handmade by M.E. I'm not sure if it makes a difference if you put the last, period after the E. But yeah, that was a little name that I came up with a while ago. I forget why, but it's the me part is based off of the initial of my first, Morgan, and then the initial of my middle name. So I was
So it's
like,
like
hey, why
me
not?
as well,
Yeah,
handmade by me, yeah.
yeah,
Because we've been in touch for quite a while now, haven't
yeah,
we? Sort of chatting
yep,
behind the scenes, and I know you were going to start a podcast. Oh, when
many
was it?
times,
Yeah, it was a while back, wasn't it? And
several times, yeah.
you were going to do a true crime one, I think, weren't you? Is that something that you're planning to do on your new one that you've done?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still sort of playing the whole podcasting thing by ear. I say, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." I mean, like the last, million times I've said to you, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it," and then I never do it. So, I'm trying to not set anything too, like, say, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it," and then, I end up, not doing it. So,
Oh, there's a quick comment I'm going to share, quite a long
what is
one.
it?
So Amy from Two Sisters, she's
Oh,
on
yeah.
a stealthy drive-by hello when I can't listen. So I'll pretend you are saying how awesome I am and how much you wish I could also be there. Smooches. Yes, Amy's awesome. We really wish
Of
she was here.
course.
So, oh, what was I going to ask you first? Let me think. So which state are you in as well? Just to kind of put you on the map.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. So is
Mhm.
Wisconsin kind of near the middle?
Sort of, yeah, like, it's yeah, I mean, I'd say roundabouts the middle, pretty
So how
much.
far are you from an ocean?
Oh, well, I'd say, well, see, I don't know, I think I'm probably closest to the Gulf of Mexico, but
Uh,
even then, it's still probably a good 16, 17 hours for me,
uh,
and I would imagine either, East or West Coast would be about, well, maybe not quite the same, but maybe close to it, so
so are there, I mean, this is quite strange concept for me living in the UK where we're
yeah,
not far from the sea anywhere you
right,
go, really. Well,
right,
relative to you guys.
yeah.
But are there people that have never seen an ocean, in real life? Are there people, is that something quite common?
I don't know. I mean, maybe people. I mean, we've got like the Great Lakes. So I
Ah,
guess maybe to some people who've never left Wisconsin, that's kind of the
a
ocean
good
of it itself,
substitute.
I guess. But right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess I've never really heard anyone say necessarily that they've never, been to an ocean. But I'm sure, there's definitely more rural parts of Wisconsin where maybe they haven't, traveled very far outside of Wisconsin anyway. So,
So is Wisconsin one of the states kind of termed the breadbasket, or is that nowhere near?
well, we used to be considered one of like the biggest like dairy states, but then California ended up like getting that. Even though I think to a lot of Wisconsinites, we're still the dairy state, even though we're not officially the dairy
Right.
state anymore. So cheese is a big thing here in Wisconsin. I mean, beer is, I mean, a big thing, and so it's kind of funny. There's lots of stories that I've read from like other people.
Oh, what's happened? Morgan's gone. Come back. All is
Oh
forgiven.
no, what
Ah,
happened?
you're back.
Okay, someone started calling me, and I was like, oh
Ah,
no, what happened?
so
Sorry
they
about that.
might call you again. If it goes off again, at least we'll know this time. So don't worry.
I was gonna say I have my phone nearby to hopefully try to quickly. Um, oh gosh, I forget where I was going with all that. Oh yeah. but there's like lots of stories I've read, people from, the UK and other countries, that they've come to Wisconsin and they're like, we thought, we were able to hold our liquor and some of that. Everybody in Wisconsin's just like,
Is it all
so
in your
yeah,
blood? You got
pretty
beer for
much.
blood.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny, like here, we've got, you can't drink until you're 21, but there's like a provision in there that if you go to a bar with your parents and if they, say it's okay and if the bar is fine with it, if they don't object, as long as your parents are there and they consent, you can drink.
Oh. What's the youngest? Is that any age?
I
Or is it like 12 or 14 or?
I don't think it's that young, but I think it just depends on the community, really.
I think here, I
So,
mean, we have to be 18 before we can
yeah,
drink, but our culture, most people 16 and above are sneaking into the pubs. If you look a bit
yeah,
older, you're managing it.
yeah.
But I think the same thing is here, where I've got a feeling it's 14. If you're with your parents,
Okay,
you can drink at 14, I think. And it might be if you're having a meal. I can't really remember. But
yeah.
yeah, so if you guys, so do a lot of parents take their kids into the bars then?
I don't know if it's very common anymore, but I know that it used to be a very, mainstream thing to do. And I remember, I think I was either 18 or 19. I can't really remember. But, I'd, go to the local, bar and, sit at the bar. I mean, I wouldn't drink, but I'm, get like a soda or something and just, watch, the baseball game or watch, watch some kind of game that, that was on and no one ever was like, nope,
Yeah,
it's
what people don't know, she's drunk now.
right.
It's 11 a.m. now, and she's already
Something in
drunk.
his coffee,
No, no. So,
Mm,
so anyway, let's talk about knitting because obviously that's why we're here,
sure,
isn't it?
yeah.
So, you are well, I'm making an assumption you're quite young compared to myself and some of the other people that will be watching. I don't know who's watching.
24.
You're 24. Wow.
Yep.
How long have you been knitting?
Well, I started, I think I was either 8 or 9, I think, when my grandma taught me how to knit and crochet. And from what I remember, I don't think I was necessarily thrilled with it at the time. I think I got very frustrated at that time, but I was still trying to kind of, get the hang of it. And then it's weird because I can't entirely remember, but my grandma tells me that I, used, the that, like a cherry, like a bright cherry red color of red heart. And
All right.
I think that I was trying to make a scarf, I think. And I think at one point I was just like, okay, this isn't working. I can't do this. And just, let it, just put it away. And then I didn't think about it for, a long, long time. And I'm trying to think exactly. It was sometime in high school for sure. I just can't remember if it was my freshman year or sophomore year that I just for some reason just decided, I'm going to pick it up and try it again. And I was actually really interested because I had those looms, those
Oh yeah.
plastic circle looms, and I started doing that, and I was making a bunch of hats, and I liked that. And then I went to YouTube and started trying to see like what else I could possibly make, with them. But then I can't remember why I switched. I don't know if I was like, well, I want to make other things, but I can't do it with the loom.
Yeah, because
So
you are quite restricted with the loom, aren't you? The increases and
somewhat, yeah,
decreases are quite difficult. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can go and buy like these more like complicated ones that will let you add like more pieces to make it bigger or smaller. But I think at the time I was like, well, there's only so much I can do with this, and so I wanted to, make other things. And I think I saw someone on YouTube do a bunch of like crocheting tutorials for like different things, hats and scarves and all, sorts of other things. And so I thought, all right, I'm gonna like pick this back up again. And I think I just went to YouTube to refresh, and I was crocheting, and knitting came a bit later. I can't really remember when now, but it just took off from there. I was just, you know, dived right into it after
Yeah,
that.
because you
So,
are quite prolific, aren't you? You make a
oh,
lot of
thanks.
garments, don't you? You do more than I'm able to do. Put it that way.
I try to.
Yeah,
It's, it's it's one of those things where I feel like I'm still, constantly learning new things, which is what I like so much, about knitting and crocheting. Is I feel like there's always something new,
yeah. I think the
or
time that
somewhat
you
new.
don't learn anything, or when you think you can't learn anything, is probably the time you need to stop, because it's so true.
Yeah,
There is
maybe.
always something, isn't there, to learn? Always, no matter how
Oh
good
yeah,
you are, you know.
definitely,
Oh, so
definitely.
Mrs. Pogo just said she's in her 50s and she used to go to the bars with her parents as well. So I don't know whether she
Oh,
lived in
okay.
the same state or not, or so maybe it's similar in another state as well. Um, so
It
which
looks like.
so
Oh,
sorry, go on.
sorry. It looks like said she's from Kentucky.
Ah, is that far from you?
Probably a good. Well, depending on which part of Kentucky, but probably a good like 6 or 7 hours,
Is
maybe.
that more south,
Like more
Kentucky?
like like southeast a little bit.
Right. I'm trying to get
Yeah.
better at my American geography. I know all
Right.
the states, but I'm not all the ones in the middle. I find harder to place, in my
Yeah.
mind. I can do the
Yeah.
ones around the edges a little bit better. Just going back to the knitting thing, which, if you had to choose, which would you choose? If you weren't ever allowed to do one or the other again, would you choose knitting or crochet?
Knitting probably.
Any reason
Yeah.
why?
I mean, as much as I love crocheting, and not that crocheting isn't, very versatile, because it is, but I just think that the way you can, I mean, for me personally, it's harder for me to get gauge in crochet than it is in knitting. And I don't know if that's maybe because, just with, two needles, it's easier, as opposed to, trying to hold the fabric with one hand and then the hook with the other, and then managing the yarn at the same time. I don't know if that's why I have such a hard
Yeah.
time with it, but
Yeah, because I
um
suppose with when you're knitting, the needles are actually what give you the gauge, whereas with crochet, it's
probably.
you, isn't it? You are down to doing the gauge
Right,
because there's nothing to actually, you don't pull the yarn onto anything to,
right.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah,
Well,
because
and
I
it's
don't know
funny.
which I would choose if I had to choose one or the other. Because crochet, I find the problem with crochet for me is I like it because it's fast, and
Mhm.
I've got a very low sort of not patient. I've got a high patience threshold, but not for things that I'm making. I want
Yeah,
it to be made and done. But
same here.
crochet causes me a lot of hand pain.
Yeah,
So if I do it for too long, you get shoulder pain, hand pain, whereas
yeah,
knitting doesn't so much. So I would probably choose knitting, even though crochet might be the one I would rather do for,
yeah.
speed reasons. So,
Well, and it's funny because I made so someone that I'm friends with, she saw on, I think it was on TikTok. It was this like jacket that was inspired by Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before
oh yeah,
Christmas, and she sent it to me, and she's like, I need this so badly. You have no idea. I will pay you. No, and at first I was a little hesitant because, as us knitters and crocheters know, it's like, but will you really pay what? Like,
yeah, and
really
more than
though?
$5. Yeah,
Well, and thankfully, this friend of mine, she's also an artist, so she understood right from the get-go that, this was gonna be a process, this wasn't gonna be something that was gonna be done in a week or even 2 weeks' time, and she's like, "I understand that I will be doling out a large sum of money," and so she's like, "Will you do it?" And I'm like, if I can find the patterns, yeah, I'll do it. So sure enough, I found both of the patterns, and I'm, doing the gauge swatch, and I'm thinking, okay, I, I don't know how many times I ripped out, restarted that gauge swatch. I'm like, I'm never gonna get gauge.
Is
Like,
is that just because of the pressure though? Because you were knitting it for someone else? Did that add a level of anxiety to
well,
it that you wouldn't have had normally?
maybe because the thing is that, like, when I'm making something for myself, I mean, I still care about gauge because I still want it to fit, but I'm not as, like, obsessed over, okay, it like needs to fit, and so I think that was probably part of it. And also the fact that she's much shorter than me,
Ah.
and I'm like, and so I'm doing this, and at first I thought, okay, it'll work out fine. I tried it on, and I'm like, and it looked like a dress on me, and I thought, oh my gosh, this girl is so much smaller than me, and I'm like, so I was kind of panicking, and by that point I'd had everything stitched together. I think I was just adding on the details at that point, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, so, and then I think it was like the next day or a day later that I gave it to her, and she put it on, and she, like, squealed with joy. She was so happy. She's like, I love it so much. It's great. And I was like, oh, thank God for that. Like, I just was like, I'm so happy you liked it.
Well, I
Because,
suppose so. With Oogie
you
Boogie,
know,
it has to be big though, doesn't it? Because
but
it's
this was
big
like,
and baggy.
I mean, this was almost taking it to like a whole new level. I thought.
Well,
I was like, oh
I
no.
think I saw a picture of it, didn't I? Because I think you had it on your Instagram, didn't you?
Hmm.
Because I remember seeing it,
Yeah, I
and I think I
did.
commented on it because I thought it is cool. It's a really cool pattern.
I
Yeah.
just was so scared. I'm like, oh no, I'm like, it's gonna be too big. It's gonna look, ridiculous potentially. And I'm like, oh god, like I was so anxious the night before, and then she just and she actually even paid me more than what I had originally asked for. And so I
Wow.
was like, oh, like, I'm
Where is
so
she?
glad you
Who is she? Give me a number. I'll knit for her.
do you want anything else? Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
everyone in the
she's
comments will want her number as well, probably.
yeah, yeah.
So, what are you
But
knitting now or crocheting now? What have you got going on?
let's see. Well, I've got those socks that I showed on, and I haven't made any more progress at all. But these
Miss
are,
Pogo, sorry to interrupt. Miss Pogo just said that squee of happiness is its own reward.
yes, yes. I mean, the relief I felt was you know, pretty much entirely worth it, really. But yeah, these are the little socks that I've got going, and I was originally going to do them on a long circular needle for magic loop, but I don't know why I decided to do them just on two 9 inches. But
Oh, nice.
yeah, my first
Who's
foray into
whose
self
yarn is
striping.
that? Is it an indie dyer or is it a
Yeah, it's an indie
box store?
dyer. I just can't remember. Oh, here's the label. Timber Yarns. I haven't worked with them before, but I got this from um oh gosh, Michelle's of Naughty Nitwits.
Oh, is it like
Her
a D-stash that she did?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I got this. I got this from her. A little tequila. Let's see,
cool.
there we go.
I've never heard
So
of them before. I mean, they might not even be in business anymore because her stash was quite an old, big stash, wasn't it? And
yeah,
lots of
yeah,
old stuff as well. Yeah.
yeah. And then I made not much progress, but I've been working on my faucet for Nitty
Ah.
McCurley's faucet along. So I finally put it on a bigger cable, at least a little bit, so it's not
Oh,
so
I like
bunched up.
I
But
like your use of colours. It's a bit darker than the ones I've seen because all the other ones I've seen have
yeah,
all been a bit sort of pastel and a little bit
yeah,
girly, a little bit. But it's so. Are you going to do it exactly as she's designed it, or are you going to extend it? Because it's a short one, isn't it? It's a short
yeah,
top, and it doesn't have
yeah.
sleeves, does it? Or does it have a tiny sleeve? I can't remember.
It's sort of like a capped sleeve, so it's not much of a sleeve. I mean, if I had more yarn, and I'm sort of debating about whether or not I want to play around with maybe adding another, maybe 1 by 1 color work in like throughout the body, maybe, because I know I don't have enough of just the one color to just knit a longer body.
Right.
I don't always mind cropped stuff just because I'll typically wear it with a dress typically, so I don't really mind if it's cropped, but yeah, I'm still kind of playing around to see how I want to do that. If I want to,
And you don't mind bobbles, do you? You're okay with
no,
mine because that hasn't
yeah,
it got bobbles around the edge, I
yeah, it's
think.
got two, like one, yeah, it's kind of hard to see with the yarn a little bit, and the lighting's a little blowing it out a bit, but so it's got
Ah, yeah, you can see.
that row and then this
Yeah.
little row of
And what yarn are you
bobbles
using
there.
for that one?
So this I'm using the dark coordinate on the camera here. This darker one is a Baracco vintage, and then this lighter one's also Baracco. And then the multicolored one is I think it's called Bluefoot Fibers. It's a dyer in Washington, I believe. A dear friend from one of the groups, from one of Kia's groups, we did a
Yeah.
Christmas, yarn swap thing. I don't know if I should say her name or not, so I'm just gonna
Okay.
not for the time being. But she very graciously gave me a skein of that. So
Cool. Yeah,
yeah.
Kia, she's what was the name? The yarn store she has.
Cedar
Cedar
Hills.
Hill. I always want to say
Mm,
Cedar Tree yarns, but it's Cedar
yeah,
Hill Farm, isn't it? Cedar Hill
yeah.
Farm yarns. Yeah, is she still dying? Because she stopped for a
Mm,
while, then she came back, and I've got a feeling she stopped again, but I might be wrong.
yeah, she did. I think she's taking another hiatus until the holidays again, I think.
Right. Yeah, because
Yeah,
it's a tough industry at the moment. I think yarn
it
dyeing, isn't it?
is.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
competition. Yeah.
yeah.
So have you got any crochet that you've been working on, or is that on the back burner for a while?
Well, the latest crochet piece I did was I don't know if you want me to
Oh yeah, yeah,
show
you
it,
can
but
show it. Yeah,
okay,
that's fine.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I brought it just in case. But this is I'm getting caught here. The trellis shawl. It's kind of hard to show all of it, but
Oh, I've forgotten who it's by. Can you remember who it's by?
the
Oh,
pink
Flamingo, was it? Pink Flamingo?
Gramingo.
Yeah, which is
Gramingo.
obviously a pseudonym. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. She
Yeah.
obviously doesn't want people to know who she really is, but
Yeah.
um,
It's so
cool.
lovely. I love this shawl. I call it my confetti cake shawl because the little baubles look like confetti.
Do people
But
want to pick them off when they see you wearing it?
kind of, yeah. I forget who I showed it to. If I showed it to my mom or who I showed it to, and they're like, "Oh, I just want to like grab them, just take them off." I'm like, "Well, no, don't do that."
Yeah, because that one, so that's going to be in the next issue of Block. So you
Okay.
kindly did, it wasn't a test knit as such. You just did I don't know what
Yeah.
we call it really, just to make sure the pattern worked and
Yeah.
everything was fine. And yeah,
Yeah.
so, and it's what's it called? Is it assigned pooling? Is that what you call it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So I've only done assigned pooling one other time, and it's a knitting, and I haven't even finished that shawl, which I want to. But I'm one of those people that will sometimes get in these, things where I'll start a bunch of things and then like a lot of them go on the back burner
I'm
as I
like that.
start
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
things.
I'm a starter,
So,
not a finisher.
right, right.
So the yarn to use, you haven't got, I've just thrown this on you now. I should have asked you earlier.
That's
But you
okay.
don't have a yarn that would be the kind of yarn suitable for those assigned pooling projects, do you?
Not nearby, no. And I
'Cause
don't think I even have. No, I don't actually have any left of this because I used both skeins of it.
so what you need, isn't it,
So
if you open the skein out, it's usually just the end bit, isn't it? There's
yeah,
usually just one pop of colour. and it doesn't matter
Yeah.
which way around it is. And then what you do, as you're knitting or crocheting, when you get to that color, that's when you do the special stitch, either a bobble or whatever it might be.
Right.
Yeah, because I've only seen it before this. I'd never seen a crocheted one before this was sent, so I was quite pleased. And you did that really fast as well, didn't you? It crocheted up very fast.
I kind of surprised myself, honestly. I was kind of like, I need to get this done because there was because the Lady Curzon cowl thing. It was due at the same time. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna challenge myself. I'm gonna do both. I'm determined to do both. So, like, hurry. Get it done.
So have you got that one handy to show?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I brought that with me too. So this is with Potion Yarns.
Wow,
lovely potion
really
yarns.
nice.
So if I can get it properly in front of the camera, there we go. And then here's a little 360.
Cool. And what idiot designed that?
Oh, please. You know, I laugh to myself every single time. You know, people are like, "Oh, you know, the designs are it just anytime they've got to make their little, quips at, everything." And I'm like, really, like, I just don't get it. I mean, frankly, I think they're jealous, honestly. So, but yeah, no, I loved knitting this. Honestly, it was so much. The texture was just so much. I mean, I just love how it turned out.
Well, it was this was I kind of did so it's obviously it's my design if people don't know, but I kind of did it the wrong way around. I'd done the design, I charted it all out.
Yeah.
And at the time there was something else that I had to do and I can't remember. So I really wanted it to be ready for the next issue. So I asked Morgan and a couple of other people if they would knit it without me having knit it myself. So part of me didn't know whether it would work. And it was only after Morgan had finished yours that I managed to knit mine, which I don't even know. I've shown it before though, so I've not got it mine to hand. But yours came out so well. It was, and there's another a bigger one that I think it was Lily knitted, which comes out much wider, doesn't it? And I've not had chance to knit that myself yet, but that one came out really well. But both will be in the next issue, so they've been, and I think the test knit went okay, didn't it? I don't think there were any mistakes. I think there might have been one mistake on it, wasn't there, which we found. I think that did I get one of the twisted stitches the wrong way around? I can't remember now.
See, I can't remember either, but the one mistake I thought was there turns out is me. And I'm looking and I'm like, what the hell did I do? I'm like, wait a minute, why is this not lighting up? I'm like, what? I'm like, and I think it was like late at night too. And I'm like, what the hell did I do?
Yeah, when I knitted it. Oh. So obviously I designed it, but when I knitted it as well, it was like, I can't remember what the error was I made, but I remember telling you about it, didn't I? Because I made an error on it. Yeah. And I think what the issue is with the pattern is that, I mean, the pattern's fine. There's no problem with the pattern, but it's not necessarily intuitive, except parts of it are. And what happens is that you kind of get into a false sense of security that everything's going to be the same, and then all of a sudden one little bit of it ends up different. And if you've just happily been going along without keeping track, you can make a mistake. So Emily's asked, what yarn is that, Morgan? Do you remember?
For this one, I think
she means that one. Yeah.
This is the main color is Potions Yarn. I think the colorway is a Pleasant Patina, I think, and it was on her I think she calls it her Temptress DK base. It's I mean, as soon as I saw this colorway, I'm like, I have to have it.
That's nice because it's kind of is it teal turquoise? Is it, or is it more green?
Like a turquoise for sure, and then there's like the specks of like a darker green, and it's kind of hard because the lights, I think, like blowing everything out.
It blocked out really well as well, hasn't it? It's really,
I don't even think I blocked it.
Oh, didn't you
block this yet? No, or maybe I did. See,
well, it doesn't need it if you haven't. It doesn't need it.
whether I block stuff or not.
Somebody else said it's well. Some of these might be to do with the shawl as well. I'm not sure. So really beautiful, and
Both are
holy
lovely.
crap, that looks lovely. So I'm going to take the credit that you're saying it all about my pattern, even though you might not be. So yeah. So well, thank you for doing that, testing it, by the way, because
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was quite cool, and it does look really good. Oh, and the how much yarn would you say you used for the bobbles? Because you don't need much, do you?
No, I mean, I used scrap for the bobbles, and it was just a little bit left over, I think, of a Cascade 220 that I had left over from a previous knit, and I barely used any of it.
Yeah, and you could, if you wanted to, do all of them different colors,
Oh
or if
yeah,
you don't like
yeah,
doing bobbles, you could just leave them out, because the
yeah, that
bobble is
too.
set within a cable circle, isn't
Yeah,
it? So it's still
yeah,
got a design element there if you don't want to do bobbles. Because I know
yeah,
one
definitely.
person said when she saw that it had bobbles in, she just went, "I'm out," because she doesn't like doing bobbles.
I think that was Amy. I think.
Was it? Was it Amy? Two
So,
sisters, Amy.
yeah, yeah.
This is where I should say something horrible about it, because she can't listen at the moment, everyone. Amy from Two Sisters. No, I wouldn't say
I
anything
didn't do it.
Yeah, it wasn't us. We didn't say it. So do you have any others to show us? Anything else? Because I know
I
you've been so
do.
busy knitting.
I've got the
Ah,
hurricane hat. I do still
yes.
need to block this one. I do know that. But yeah, so this is the hurricane hat. Of course, it's, yeah, I still need to block it. The
Wow,
top
it's really
is.
stretchy, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's really. I'll put it on too, just to.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, I love a bit of slouch to my hats for sure. You know, like growing up, I'd pretty much wear, wear hats all the time. Like, I mean, even if it was like 90 outside, I'd still be hat. Everybody's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I just like wearing a hat. I don't know. It's
And that was
comfortable."
designed by our friend in New Zealand or Australia. I can't remember where he's from. Red King, I think his
Yeah.
username is, isn't it? I can't remember his real
Yeah.
name. But yeah, and it's a simple pattern, isn't it? But it
Yeah.
looks much more complicated than it actually is.
Well, and I seem to have made it much more complicated than what it was too, because all this time I've been doing knit two togethers the wrong way this entire time. So I do mine through the back loop. So instead of, going through the front of the stitch, I've always gone through the back. And so I'm working on this and I'm like, this looks nothing like this. I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm looking and I'm like, why? I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I keep knitting a few more rows, like maybe, it's just the first. I'm like, this doesn't look
Yeah,
like,
because Cezi knitted one as well, didn't she? And
yeah.
what was the issue Cezi had? Because there was something happened with hers, didn't it? And
Oh,
I
she
can't
had
remember what it
dropped a
was.
stitch.
Oh, that's right. And yeah, and she was trying to work out
How
where
to
the twist would be. Yeah.
pick it
Oh
back
God,
up.
she must have been so pissed off about that, because
Oh, I would have been so mad.
oh, because she'd done quite a lot of the hat as well, hadn't she, at that
Yeah.
point? Yeah.
Yep.
Oof, God. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
I don't
lovely
know.
pattern, and it's I love patterns that look more complicated than they are
Yeah.
to do. There's something really
Yeah.
cool about that. So
Yeah.
any
Definitely.
more? Because I'm sure you've got others, haven't you?
I do, but I didn't bring any other ones with me. I should have brought more projects out here. But see, like your cats, I can't trust mine around anything anymore. I can't. Even, they used to be so good. Like, they'd be so weird. They'd go after the wool itself, or they'd go after it if it was attached to a whip. So I'm like, okay, I can't leave either of those two things out, even for a second. Even if I go to another room just to grab something and I come back. Nope,
Mm.
nope. But then one day, I left one of my shawls sitting out because they had never gone after like a finished object before. And I forget if I went to the kitchen to start cooking or, something. And I came back and the shawl was on the floor and it was like, and I was like, oh I'm like, I was like, you two are gonna be the death of
Yeah,
me.
because they never do it when it's at the beginning of a project. It's always when you've spent 3 weeks knitting something and it's almost done. That's when they decide to ruin it and pluck it, or when it's finished.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
so I still have it. I've got the stitches, you know, on a little cable thing, but I've been told a couple of different ways that I could potentially go about fixing it, but I'm like, every time I look at it, I get so mad all
Yeah,
over again, and I'm like, I just can't. I'm like,
yeah,
I
put it
just don't
away
want to
for a
look at
bit
it.
until the pain has gone, and then look at it, you know, with new eyes. Because I
Yeah.
find that if I leave something about a year in a bag that I can't see, in a year's time, I'm happy to rip it out. You know, I don't have any emotional attachment to it anymore. You know,
Well, and where they rip, so like for example, like we're gonna take this shawl again, for example. They they ripped it right along like here basically. So there's this big chunk of a part of it missing, and it was right along one of
wow.
the edges. And I'm like, I don't know how I fix this. Like make it,
Could you? Would you have to unravel it to that point? Because was it a top-down shawl? Did you start at the neck and work out like that one that you've got there, or was it one
no,
that you started from the bottom and worked in?
yeah, yeah. So
Oh
yes, so
no!
it was a yeah,
Oh, so
yeah.
it's the begin. Oh God! Is there any way of doing it the other way? No.
I have no idea.
Oh, Emily's put, or they chew through your working yarn after you've cast on
Yes.
through.
Yep.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I know. Well, I'll tell you about my knitting disaster that happened yesterday. I think I
Oh,
told you about.
yeah.
It's not that bad
Yeah.
actually. It's
I
easily
still would have been
rectified.
mad though.
But I'm well. I'll show you the other cowl first because I'm hoping that you'll do the test knit first.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
it's a. I've shown this before, but I'll show it again. It's a simple
Yeah.
cowl based on or what you call them, mitre squares. But I've done something a little bit different. I've used the Fibonacci sequence. And by the way, people who hate maths, you don't have to know any maths to do this pattern. I've done it all for you. But the idea is that it's all each one is 1.62% bigger than the latest one, which you don't need to know. I've done all that for you. And then because it's a double decrease in the middle, I've then picked up with a crochet hook and crocheted around. And what I did was it's made in two parts, this. So I was going to change the red because I didn't like it, but you like the red, and also a few
I
other
do.
people said they preferred it, so I'm going to keep that. But where it went wrong is I've done another version, slightly different. So this, I hope this will show. So I've done this in more neutral colours.
Oh yeah.
And
that's really cool too.
So this is, because you can make this into a blanket. So the idea is that each square gets bigger and bigger. So if you carried on the sequence, if I turn it that way, the next square would go above this one and it would be as wide as the whole thing. And be so. And what happens if you look on this last square, the yarn kept running out, so I had to keep changing it. Whereas on the other squares, you get the full square in one color. So anyway, this one is also going to be a cowl, and it just needs to be seamed down this end. And last night I was doing, you know, when you do a really good seam, and it was a mattress stitch, and I was really like, wow, I'm doing a really good job of this, because sometimes with mattress stitch, especially if it's garter, because this is garter, it doesn't always look good. And I got about 3/4 of the way through, and I thought, oh, I'll just do, you know, when you tighten it up and it all zips together. And I like that feeling because it's kind of very satisfying. But the yarn is cotton and lamb's wool. Now, I thought that would hold together, and it's held double. I was holding it double, and I pulled it, and it snapped in the middle. It just came off in my hand, but I didn't know where, so I just pulled it, and the whole seam just came apart. So I thought, right, that's it. and that was about 3 in the morning. So that
Yeah,
went back in the bag, and then but afterwards I've realised it's
yeah,
probably a good thing because I want to block it. I thought I'm probably better
yeah.
blocking it as a rectangle rather than as a
Right, yeah.
cowl. Oh, Emily liked the red on the other one as well. Yeah, so most people did. So I'm going to leave it. I'll leave the red on there. So when I do that pattern, I don't know whether that one will be in the next issue or the issue after. Probably the issue after, because I've got to get it testing it as well. Because it's a very very simple pattern, but the instructions are. It's not that it's difficult, it's explaining where you have to pick up stitches to do the next square. That's the difficult bit, finding the right words. So you're going to be my guinea pig if you don't mind doing
No,
it.
that's fine. That's fine. Well, and I finished that first square, and I know that when you were telling me about how, okay, now to go to pick up for, the second square, I'm reading it and I'm like, maybe I just haven't had coffee today. Maybe there's just been too much going on today that my brain's just like, nope, no.
Well, what you do, I think, oh, Morgan's frozen. Maybe her phone might be ringing again. Well, while she's frozen, are you back?
Are you back? You
Yeah. Oh, did I froze?
you
I thought you
no, you
froze.
didn't freeze, but like the screens went dark there for a
Oh,
minute.
really? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're
Could
back.
still hear you though, but yeah, it's weird.
You just hear me droning on. Well, the so when you do I'll try and show you on this one. When you do the is that high enough? So the first square is this light one here.
Yeah.
And it's quite small. It's about, how big would you say? It's about 1.5 inches square.
Not that,
And then when you finish it, so the mitre bit goes along that middle, and that's your last stitch here. But then what you do, you put that to one side, and then you cast on separately on your next square, or half of your next square, on a different needle. So you've already cast this one off, so it's the same needle, but you don't have this on your needle anymore. And then once you've cast on half of the stitches, you cast on these bottom stitches here, then you pick up the other half along this side.
Okay.
So so every time you finish a square, it's almost like you can put it down while you cast on the next set of stitches, and then you join it. So it's
that makes sense.
It makes sense. I've just got to try and work out how to write that to make sense, because it makes sense in my mind, but I know it's one of them tricky things, because I know the instinct with mitre squares is to pick up first and then cast on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't quite work right if you do this particular pattern. Doesn't work right if you do that. But anyway, we'll get that sorted at some point. So what else? Any other things that you're working on, or is that everything you can show us for now?
That's pretty much it. Like I've got various projects that have been sitting in hibernation for probably at least 6 months. That I've just, and it's not that I don't like them. It's just, I didn't have enough yarn to finish, so I still have to get, more yarn to finish them, or I started something else and, that's just got my attention, at the moment. But yeah, I'm hoping this year I can just work through everything and get at least mostly everything done, hopefully.
Have you ever? Do you have any? Because the fact that with you being only 24, do you think you'll ever get into designing, or have you already designed anything?
I've thought about designing, but then every time I sit down and think, okay, right, like what do I want to make? It's like, I've thought about trying to do like Fallout, a Fallout themed series, and Fallout is a game series that was originally by Bethesda, and then I believe Microsoft somewhat recently just took over. And this is actually what a lot of my tattoos on this arm are from. So I've been wanting to do a hat that's got this logo, on it. But the problem is that this is a very circular. There's no corners, and so trying to figure out, okay, right, how could I get that charted nicely on like a hat or you know.
Would I wonder if the circular cable thing that you did on the cowl,
Oh,
I wonder
maybe.
whether doing something with that would work. So rather than it being,
Probably.
you know, something with a bit of relief to it, so it actually sticks out. Because I'm sure you could
Yeah.
come. Ah, Anne's here. I was going to say, you know who you
Oh,
need to speak to? Anne Pinkover.
yeah. Yeah.
Because this is her territory. She's the one that does
Right.
little logos on hats.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because weren't you looking to try and get like a template for a hat so that you had a starting point?
Yeah, and it was probably just, well, like originally I was gonna do it with color work. And
Yeah, and you need to do this
yeah,
interview because when
yeah,
you talk about the nerd stuff, I'm only slightly nerdy, superhero nerdy, but all the gaming
yeah.
stuff it just goes completely over my head.
I mean, I like all like the superhero. You know, it's kind of interesting because like growing up, I've always had trouble because I'm interested in so many different kinds of things, and of course, there's never enough time in the day for all of it. So I'm always in this trying to balance everything, trying to find time for everything. And so there's been some things that have just sort of gone by the wayside that I've always thought, oh, it's kind of a shame that I don't really do that anymore, or but it's like there's only so much time that I have to
Yeah.
fit everything in.
And that's even with a lockdown that we've just had, isn't it? We had all the time in the world
Yeah,
during then, didn't
yeah,
we?
yeah, and that was a point too where like I had actually like dropped out of school, at that point, and I thought, right, okay, I'm gonna try to take some time off, figure out what I want to do with my life, and but even then it was I was actually still going to work at that time too, so it
So was
never.
that when you say school, is that like college or
Yeah,
university or yeah? So
yeah.
what was this? Were you doing was it languages? What was it you do at college or did at college?
So I initially had my degree in international studies, and it had an emphasis on foreign languages. And ideally, I wanted to be an interpreter. And but part of that major was going abroad as being a requirement, which I mean I get. Obviously, if
Yeah.
you're going international studies might be a good idea to travel abroad. Well, I was under the understanding that the financial aid stuff would help with the trip. Well, I did my whole application. I was going to go to Argentina, and I thought, okay, right, I've got my application in, I've got all my financial aid stuff done. I'm like, all right, I'm going. This is going to be great. And I get down to it, and they say, oh yeah, you need another like $14,000 to like do. And
What?
so I met with one of the financial aid people on campus, and I'm like, what? I thought financial aid was going to cover this. Like I thought this was going to be like a loan that I thought this was going to be part of my loans that I'd be eventually paying back. And the guy goes, no, this they don't cover this stuff. And so he basically was like, yeah, do you know anyone who can loan you for? And I'm like,
Yeah, because who's got
what?
that in the back pocket? Yeah.
Well, and that's how he was kind of acting. Like he asked me if I had any family that could help me out, and I'm like, no. None
That's
of my
crazy.
family
Because,
that I know of has 14 grand just like laying
yeah.
around, And so I had to cancel everything and back out, and it was heartbreaking. And then like the next couple semesters, my advisor kept saying, okay, so when are you going to go abroad? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't have the kind of money that there were, and like even if I had kept working and even tried to even pick up more hours, like there was no way that I was going to be able to save that kind of money to go. And I tried for scholarships and grants and stuff like that, and it just never came through. So
Well, you could have
you know,
identified as a black woman, and you might have found a scholarship.
oh, all those
That seems
all
so.
those
I
nice
mean,
ways.
that seems really shocking to me. But I suppose from where I am, it's not that far to Europe.
Right,
We
right.
can go there for a weekend if we want to. So it does
Yeah.
work out a hell of a lot cheaper. But even South America, it's not. Well, I know it's a different continent. I know, but it's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of. You'd still wouldn't think it'd be that much. I could understand it if you were flying to either Australia or to Japan or to
Right.
China even. But you're on the kind of the same continent, aren't you? Kind of.
Well,
Well,
yeah, and it was so surprising. And so because I was kind of being met with the pressure of, okay, like you're now in like a junior standing, you need to like I mean, like, admittedly, I kind of just crumbled under the pressure, and I ended up just saying screw it, and I changed my major. And so I changed it to biology because at the time I thought, okay, like I could see myself maybe being, a vet or working with, exotic animals and, stuff like that. And but then the problem with that was that I was essentially starting over as a freshman, essentially. So I was a junior starting as a freshman basically in all these, biology classes. And then that's sort of when the pandemic hit. And I was like, there's no way I can do online school. There's no way that I can, do all of this. I basically kind of like freaked out. I don't know what to do. Like, and so I thought, okay, I just completely dropped out and I thought, I need some time to think about what I'm doing, where I really want to go, how, I want to do things. And so I took maybe a month or so and I was just researching various majors and just trying to, decide on something. And finally, that's when I chose criminal justice. And I
ah,
ended up doing school entirely online. And I thought, right, all right, I'm going to do it, and I ended up loving it. I wish I could have done it the whole entire time I was in
wow.
school. I loved doing online classes.
So
And
just going back to the biology bit, did you
yeah,
learn enough to know what a woman is? You knew
I
I was
knew
going to ask that, didn't you?
I knew way before biology class
Ah, we've got a
what a
clever
woman
one here,
was.
everyone.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when they'll change the biology lessons to, reflect the culture now.
I almost don't even ever like want to know. Like, just no one tell me. Just spare me any just any of it.
When you were actually physically going to uni then,
Yeah.
did you notice how woke it was? Or was your uni okay? Was it kind of just,
It's it is definitely woke, but I think because I mostly hung out with the foreign language crowd because at that time I was taking Spanish, French, Arabic. I forget if I had, yeah, those were the three that I was taking at that time. And I really didn't hang around too many people because I was either, studying or, I was never the party type. I never went to any parties, never did any of that. So, I didn't really have to deal with a ton of, woke things, thankfully, even
yeah.
though I knew that they were there, but
I
it
suppose, though, if you think
was
about it,
jarring.
the kind of subjects that you initially were looking at, anyway, the languages and then the biology thing, they're
Yeah.
probably not the kind of subjects that attract woke people anyway, because it's things like media studies, isn't it, that are going to attract the
I
woke
mean, it
lot.
kind of depends. Like in some of my language classes, there were definitely some people who were also political science majors too, and so they were looking at taking the different foreign language classes for like um, diplomacy courses and things like that. And I definitely knew some of them that were definitely woke, but we never really talked about anything like that. I've never been interested really in talking to people about politics. You know, like my parents raised me where that was not something that was talked about even amongst, you know, good friends.
Yeah, politics, religion, and sex. Never talk about those
And
three
money.
things.
Money
Oh yes,
too. They're like,
yes.
never, just, you know, never talk about any of those.
Which are
And
all my
that's,
favorite
you know,
subjects to talk about. So I'm going to put you on the spot now
Sure.
because I want to, because I love hearing languages. I'm absolutely useless. I learned French and German at school. Can't speak any of it, although I can read a tiny little bit of French, tiny little bit. So sometimes I can get the gist. I did a bit of Esperanto, which I talked about recently on Knitting World. But which is your best subject? So which is the one that you're the most fluent? Is that the right word?
Yeah. I'd say I'm probably the most fluent in Spanish, probably.
Oh, right. I know Americans are probably very used to Spanish, but I'm not. So go on, give us a bit of Spanish. You don't know what to say now, do you?
No, I know. It's just gonna be like blank. Okay. Hola, me llamo Morgan, soy de los Estados Unidos. Hablo un poquito de español, pero oh boy, I'm gonna forget my verbs now. Estudio mucho en la escuela, pero voy a España y a Francia en 2015 y hablaba mucho en español y sí.
Wow, you say so fast. So, and go on.
Oh, sorry.
No, go on. Say what you're going to say.
You know, normally it's funny because I'll, you know, have these situations where I, you know, can use my Spanish in real life, but then it's like I get to that point and then it's like I feel like I just forget everything. It's just like, I mean, I can understand a lot of it. You know, if someone's just kind of off and they're, you know, they're speaking or they're telling me something, I can understand pretty much, you know, everything. But it's when I have to respond back and try to sound, you know.
Yeah, when I've tried to learn, I find that the reading of it is fine, the writing of it is fine, and if they're not talking to me, I can usually pick things up. But the moment they're talking to me, I can't understand a word, and I think it's that pressure of. And also the other thing, I just don't remember the vocabulary. So when I've seen it written down, I know what the word means, but to think of that word, I just can't do it. It's just not there.
I've heard from a lot of people that you know, the key to try to really transition yourself to being more fluent in, you know, in any language is to not think in, you know, for us, you know, say example, to not think in English.
To think in the language that you're trying to speak, right?
Yeah, and which is really easier said than done when you're, you know, kind of in that, you know, in that situation and you're, you know, and you kind of feel panicked. But I used to actually go around and try to practice as many languages as I could. But there was one time, and I forget if it was where I was working or what had happened, but I had initially thought that someone was, you know, didn't speak much English and needed help. And so I started speaking in Spanish, and the lady kind of like looked at me and she's like, "I can speak English." And I
really
just,
offended.
Kind of. And every bit of me, and I had to have been like 15 or 16. Every bit of me just wanted the ground to like swallow me up. I felt awful. And from that moment forward, I had always been a bit more hesitant about, you know, speaking in Spanish, even when there were cases where I think it would have been more helpful if I had spoken Spanish.
Well, have you? I mean, I'm going to make an assumption that you've never been to France.
I have.
Oh, you have? Right. I was just going to say, if you go to France and try and speak in French, they will reply in English.
Well, Paris, I know for sure. You know, the Parisians tend to not be as, and again, this is a generalization, so if anybody,
yeah, all the French people, don't be offended.
Allegedly, you know, they're not as patient with, but see, I don't remember. I think I definitely used more English in France than I did in Spain, because that was kind of like a little group trip. We had taken a 10-day kind of trip to France and Spain. We spent half the time between the two, and I definitely used more English in France than I did
Right.
in Spain.
So
But
go on, give us a bit of French.
ok, bonjour, je m'appelle Morgan. Je parle un peu de français, mais c'est pas très bon. Pourquoi mon accent, c'est pas très authentique. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. That's it.
Oh, you do the accents well.
No, so yeah, I think I still sound pretty American yet, but that's probably, I mean, maybe that's me. Don't know, but
I think to be honest though, I think everybody learning a foreign language has an accent. It's
yeah,
very few. The only times I've noticed a lot of Germans are able to speak perfect American English,
oh
but
yeah,
very few can speak perfect English, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Unless they've been brought up, with
right,
a parent, say, who's English
yeah,
or whatever. But it's the same for us, isn't it? Because I often wonder, when we watch films or when I watch films and you've got a character who's supposed to be Russian or German or whatever, they always give them an accent when they're speaking
yeah,
English. And I always ask foreign people, do they do that for English speakers? So if it's a French film, do they give them a funny French accent so that
right.
and they do, apparently they do. And one of the things, if it's
That's
an English
interesting.
speaker, for certain for French and for German, is that they the English speaker always speaks French with a very soft accent, apparently, whereas German and French is quite hard, angular. There's
Yeah,
angular sounds to it. That's how I can, But
yeah.
so sorry, I'm fascinated by languages just because I'm so rubbish at them. So you also speak a bit of Arabic.
Well, not really. That one is sort of one of those things where kind of the classic phrase of you lose it if you don't use it, and that is exactly what happened with me. I mean, I used it a lot while we were in school, but then as soon as I left and went to a different university online, I didn't take any language classes, there at all, and so I didn't use Arabic at all, and I've pretty much forgotten damn near all of
Because
it.
written Arabic
So,
is quite interesting, isn't it? Because nearly all of the Muslim countries
mhm,
understand Arabic when it's written, but
yeah,
they all speak it slightly different, and because it
different
doesn't have
dialects.
vowels, does it? Is that right? The written language doesn't have vowels, or does it?
Well, see, it's kind of tricky because I mean, like modern standard Arabic is the Arabic that they use with the writing, and then I know I've heard that on some like news stations and stuff like that. That's the spoken Arabic, but it's not very common. Typically, any news station wherever it's from is in the local
Right, yeah.
dialect. But I've seen it where there's different like marks above some of the letters that will indicate whether or not there's a vowel or not, but it's not very common though. So
Right.
it's sort of one of those things where you have to learn the word, and then when you see it next, then you're like, okay, that's
Yeah, because a
how
lot
it's
of
said.
words have so for example, the is it one of the greetings is salam alaikum, is it? Salam alaikum.
Yep.
So
Assalamu alaikum.
so it's SLM is the first word in that, isn't it? Is that right?
It's actually what's the letter called? The aleph, which is the just like the one character. I guess you could call it.
Is that an A sound or
There.
an S
Yeah,
sound? The A sound.
a sound. So it's assalamu alaikum.
And is that because it's the beginning of a word that it's a vowel at the beginning of the word? or a
Not
vowel sound?
necessarily. Well, yeah. So with that one, if it's at the beginning, I believe typically that's just the ah sound, and then I think it depends on if it's in like the middle of the word. Um, yeah, there's so much
Yeah,
that
because they
that
have
I don't
three
remember.
different forms of each letter, I think, don't they? So they have
They
a
do.
beginning, a middle,
Yeah.
and an end, don't they? Yeah.
Yep.
So we thought ours was complex. Yeah, because one of the other words, I mean, this is politically incorrect, but one of the
Yeah.
other words is ABD. So it's like a derivation of abd, and that apparently means Africa,
Oh, okay.
continent of Africa, but it also means slave, which is
Mm.
really dodgy. So ABD, so the name Abdullah, which is
Mhm.
ABD, and then Allah means slave of Allah. So
Huh.
that's why it's Abdullah. So anything with ABD together in
Yeah.
the sound, which will have different vowels anywhere in it, will have some
Right.
kind of link to that. It's a fascinating language, I think. But
It
isn't it?
is.
It's classed as a. Is it a level 6? Level 6 is the hardest, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, and of course in the US we don't really class because I know that like there's a European standard where they do like A1, A2, and then is it
Yeah,
like B1, B2, and then the C levels like the highest
yeah.
one. Yeah, and of course we don't do any of that in the US. So it's like, but most people will say, Arabic, Chinese, I'm trying to think of the other ones that, you know, people typically say are the hardest.
Japanese, is that
Um,
one?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I do know it with Chinese though. It's kind of interesting. Like you never have to conjugate a verb.
Oh,
So like in English when we say, he says, I say, I, in Chinese you don't ever have to do that.
so
And
it would be I am go, we are go, I go. Is it that kind of thing for going
kind of,
instead of
yeah, yeah.
ah?
And I believe what they do to kind of indicate if it's like present tense, past tense, future tense, is they use different not suffix is probably the wrong word, but they use like a character that attaches either I think it's to the end of the sentence that sort of indicates if it's
And is
present
that
tense, past
how
tense, and
is
all
that
that.
pronounced though? Do they pronounce that, or is that only in written Chinese?
They'll they'll pronounce it too.
Ah,
Yeah.
so it might be like a little inflection at the end.
Or it's like a word. I know. I think "le" is one of the. See, and of course, I'm forgetting so much of it. But but I think that's one of the suffixes that's used. Um, and it's funny because I was thinking about the other day with the whole language learning thing is that it's kind of what's the word, like ironic that I like learning languages so much when, and I'm sure you and everyone else is able to maybe kind of hear it, but I've on and off growing up I've had a stammer.
Oh yeah.
And initially, like, no one really like believed it at the school I was going to, and my mom was trying to like fight, but like people at the school would be like, no, this is happening, she might need a bit of help. And it wasn't until I ended up vocalizing in school that it was annoying, I was uncomfortable by it, and that I wanted to try to fix it. And so it's just kind of funny how and like all the jobs I've had, it's always been interacting with people. And so I've just always found it kind of funny that it's like I love learning languages so much,
And
and that it's something,
does the stammer happen when you're speaking in another language as well?
sometimes, yeah,
Ah, because I was just wondering, because I
yeah,
know some people with stammers, when they sing, the stammer isn't there. So I just wondered if learning another language or speaking in a different language would stop it as well. But is it more common though when you're speaking in your own language?
I guess it sort of depends. I've noticed, sort of throughout the years that if I'm really, like excited about something, very, animated, it can come out. If I'm nervous about something, it can come out. It just sort of depends. And, even, for a while, it was really weird. I even had trouble saying my own name at times. Like when you go and get a coffee, and they say, okay, what's the name for the order? Even though I knew for a while I would anticipate the question, for some reason, my stammer is one of those things where it can happen where I'll start to try to say, a letter, and then no air comes out, no sound, no air, nothing. So I'm like standing there like, they're kind of looking at me like, yes, like, your name, and I'm like, and so then it takes like an extra second for me to like, okay,
And is
let it
the
out.
anticipation of saying that word, is that part of the problem? So is it because you've got to say your name or that word that it kind of starts that off?
I think it used to be that way. And then, even when I'm like, okay, they're probably going to ask you your name, just, sometimes it would happen, sometimes it wouldn't. It's just really, really odd, but yeah, it's
I
just one
think
of
it's
those funny
brilliant that
things.
you're doing a lot of things that kind of go contrary to what you'd expect of someone with a stammer, which I think is great because it obviously doesn't bother you now. You know what I mean? It obviously isn't.
I mean, not really. No, I mean, I think when I was younger, it used to bother me a lot because I'd be in class and we would do these things where, okay, we're reading from a book. Okay, it's your turn to read, this paragraph, and it would especially happen a lot where that whole, no sound would like come out. That used to happen a lot more often, and so I'd be reading and just for no reason, at all. I mean, I never felt nervous reading, but just, and it would typically happen with either M's, N's, or R's.
Oh,
And so I'd get to a word, and then of course, no sound, no, nothing would come out. And then they would say the word, the teacher would say the word as if like I wasn't,
you knew the
comprehending the
word.
word. I knew the word. I just couldn't, no sound was coming out. And so I was like, as a kid, I got really like annoyed by that. I'm like, I know what the word is. I just can't. The noise won't come out.
Is it a breathing thing, do you think? So is it like
I don't know.
having no air in your lungs to actually formulate the word because you've kind of gulped it down or let it out or whatever?
I don't know. It's really like it's almost as if the air would get like caught almost. Like I'd be trying to say it and it would be like and it's like nothing would come out. And I remember the speech pathologist calling it something. I don't remember what it was. But I'm like, why, like why does the air and the sound just stop like right there, nothing, like nothing else is coming out. It's really, really odd, but you know it, it's just one of those things where I think like I wonder if learning languages was kind of that thing that I just kind of latched on to because it was something, you know just yeah, don't know,
Well, I
but
wonder if because when you're learning a language, you have to think about the word sometimes, don't you?
yeah,
You have to
yeah,
find that word. So maybe it's kind of you're almost copying the stammer in a way as a
yeah, maybe,
non-stammerer, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
maybe, yeah, because
yeah.
I bet people don't really notice as much, do they, when you're speaking another language?
Probably not. I mean, I wouldn't say like
It's not that noticeable, to be fair, though. It isn't that noticeable.
well, that's
Now
good.
you've said it. Yeah, now you've said it. I
Now,
can
now we're
hear. Yeah.
watching, looking for it now. But yeah, it's just really odd. I've always kind of thought that you know potentially I'd like shy away from things that would involve speed because I used to do like what do you call it speech competitions
Oh yeah.
forensics, that's what it's called. And so I'd do that, and it was just always one of those things where I just thought it's kind of weird that it's like like this is where the interest kind of gravitated towards, and you know and now I'm doing this YouTube thing, which I was kind of thought, oh, don't know if I'll do it, don't know if I really like talking to the camera by myself. I like doing this stuff because it's like, okay, I'm talking to someone, I'm not just
Yeah, being on your own is tough, isn't it? Is like,
yeah,
so I admire you doing it on your own. I think I've only done one on my own so far, and I didn't really enjoy it. I definitely need to have that sort of back and forth
yeah.
kind of thing. But yeah, you've done. I think you should definitely carry on. And the other thing,
I'm hoping so.
I mean, not that I could dole out advice because I've only been doing it a short time myself, but just do just carry on doing it your way, because it doesn't matter. If you do it somebody else's way, it won't seem authentic, I suppose. But
Yeah,
you mentioned the word forensics, and that's given me a link into something else that I wanted to
yeah,
ask you about, which is
yeah.
true crime. So I know that you do have a bit of a
Yes,
thing for that, and you
I
mentioned
do.
earlier about doing it as part of your online course.
Yeah.
So what is it about true crime that you like?
So kind of like Tabitha, I was probably watching the show Criminal Minds at a bit too early of an age. And I know Criminal Minds isn't exactly a true crime, it's not classed as true crime, but I just, I found that show fascinating. I loved the idea of studying human behavior and using that to figure out who did it.
Right,
And
yeah.
so I just thought that was amazing, and from there it just kind of kept, because I don't think because before my mom used to hate true crime shows, didn't like them, so I never watched anything with her. But when I was over at my grandma's house, she'd have um Criminal Minds, Law and Order SVU, all of these shows that a child should not really be watching. But I'd just be, sitting around, no one, you know, I think because growing up I was so quiet all the time that I think sometimes people didn't really notice if I was like
That you are
sitting somewhere
plotting to kill them
watching,
all.
you know, but I just sit and watch these shows, and I just thought it's just
Is
so
there? I know
interesting.
with Tabitha of Murder Knits, in case anybody
Yeah,
doesn't know, I think her first case that she was obsessed with was John Benet Ramsey. I
yeah.
think, because I think that happened when she was quite young, and she's always followed it. Do you have a similar case in real crime that has always sort of been there in the back of your mind?
The case of John List. I
Oh, tell
forget.
me. I don't know whether I know that one. You have to tell me.
So, see now, I forget which state it was. Yeah, I forget which state. But John List was a sort of a conservative Lutheran guy. I believe he was Lutheran, and him and his family, lived in this nice little, subdivision, and he had been married once before and had, I believe, a daughter, and then he had divorced and gotten remarried and had, I forget if it was 2 or 3 kids. So I don't quite remember now. But he basically feared that his family was essentially turning away from God. He uh, was kind of dealing with his own depression and things like that. And basically, what he killed his whole family. Excuse me. His wife, his kids, his mother, who was living with them at the time, and he had killed them all and basically fled. And I think it was at one point he was on the FBI's Most Wanted, that show, and I think he evaded for 18 years, I believe it was. He just started, a whole new life. I forget where he had moved to. I'm telling this case really well, aren't I? I don't remember much of it now. But
it's because I put you on the spot, though, isn't it? You weren't expecting me to ask you that, were you? So
maybe. But yeah, so he just lived a whole nother life. He just started over. He had gotten remarried again. I don't believe he had any children, though, that I can remember. And everyone just knew him as a different person. And eventually, people, realized that, the family, the kids weren't at school, and so they had, of course, gone and checked the house. And he had turned, the air conditioning like way up, so it was, cold inside the house and everything.
oh, is this so the bodies wouldn't decompose as fast?
As fast, yeah.
Ah.
And police had, discovered everyone, and then they basically had the task of finding him. And so someone had essentially recreated a bust of, John List, and basically had, figured, like based on pictures of his mother and father, like recreated what he would essentially potentially look like. And they put it on the FBI's Most Wanted, show. And someone, who, knew, recognized it, and kind of just one day in like a joking fashion brought it up to his, wife at that time. But then it just kept like nagging at her. And so eventually, I believe she was the one who had called it in, and they found him. And when you look at the, bust, and then, the photo of him, being arrested, it is damn near a dead ringer.
Wow.
Like it's incredible. And so
that's
just
crazy, isn't it?
So yeah, so just like that case just always stuck with me, because I thought, the artistry of, like taking photos of someone's parents, and then trying, and then like predicting what someone would like look like nearly 20 years later. And then like the glasses that this artist found to put on the bust was like, oh, sorry, that's the air conditioner going out. Hold on, let me.
Oh, can't hear anything. It's okay.
Oh no, you can't.
Oh, only slightly. I don't think
okay.
it's any. I don't think it'll annoy anyone. I don't think. And if it does, tough.
There you go.
It's obviously hot there.
I guess so. But yeah, like the glasses that the artist used on the bust were, again, almost like a dead ringer for the glasses that John List was wearing when they finally arrested him. It was like, it's just mind-blowing to me.
Well, it's funny when you mentioned about the bodies in the house and the air conditioner, and then your air conditioner comes on. You've obviously got a body in there somewhere.
Suspicious, yeah.
Well, there was a guy that used to live next door to me, and what's this? Audio is fine, but now I'm afraid of too strong air conditioning. Well, the guy next door was a bit of a weird guy, and he was insane, and he used to cackle every night, like like that for hours and hours and hours. And I recorded him a few times. He was bad. Well, anyway, one summer, it all went quiet, and nobody really knew who he was, because here it's not like in America. You don't make friends with your neighbors very much in the cities here. You can go all your life and not know who your next door neighbor is. Well, anyway, one day there was a really bad smell, and somebody knocked on my door because they thought it was my cats, and it was their litter tray. And when I opened the door, the smell hit me, and I just said, somebody's dead. I said, that's death. because the smell is so
It's
specific.
yes.
Yeah, you can't mistake it for something wrong. Well, anyway, he'd been dead in there for quite some time, and the smell was just horrific. So yeah, so
Oh
air
God.
conditioning is obviously the way. We don't have that here. But the in the
Oh
news this week,
yeah.
this wasn't a murder, but somebody was found in a flat and they'd been dead for 6 years and nobody knew. And they were on benefits, which means that they were getting their rent paid for them
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
state. But because they were on benefits, their rent was paid, so nobody ever
No one
checked
ever.
to see. So it's like, wow, I
There was.
don't want.
I'm. Oh. Well, I'm kind of surprised there was never any kind of like welfare check, or like there was nobody that was,
Apparently they did. They sent letters, but they never responded. But that's very,
but
very
over
typically
6 years
English, you know. I know.
though.
It's bad,
I
isn't
mean,
it?
oh
It's bad.
yeah,
So that must have
that's
smelt bad.
well, and then, I mean, if they've been in there 6 years, I mean, oh yeah, oh yeah. No, no
So,
thanks.
so aren't you glad you're not a forensic, whatever they call them, scientist or whatever, having
Well,
to look at those?
well, for a while, I've really really wanted to be a crime scene technician, and my mom was like, "You don't want to do that, like you just don't. Like, what if and she would always be like, well, what if it was a scene that involved a child, or and I'm like, but you know I'm like, look, mom, like I'll find out day one of the job if I can handle it or not. If I got the stomach for it or not. I mean, in some of my books, we had like picture. I'm not going to go too graphic, so don't worry, anyone. But
I
I mean,
might afterwards, though.
but there were pictures of cadavers, and some of them have exhibited what like bullet wounds looked like, or what stab wounds looked like, or the various stages of death. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw pictures of it, but I get that seeing pictures versus oh, one of the cats is being naughty. Hey, um seeing pictures versus actually seeing it are like two different things.
So what's cadaver college? Obviously, I think Morgan's having another phone call. I think
I'm
that's what that
sorry.
is.
Someone
Oh,
tried
are
to
you
call
back?
me again.
It's okay. Don't worry.
I'm
I knew that's what it was.
sorry.
So cadaver college is obviously that's dead bodies, isn't it? So what would that be?
So like a cadaver college is typically like med students have to kind of go through it a lot, where there's actual it's not just like a skeleton. It's
Oh, they get given a body.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think surgeons here have that. I think they at the start of their course they're given a cadaver, and then they have
Yeah.
that cadaver all the way through. And well, my years ago, before I was born, my dad used to be a policeman, and
yeah.
he had to be there for certain autopsies. And he said the first thing they were taught. I don't know whether you have the same product, but we have something called Vicks, which is like a vapor rub thing. And and he said that he was told to rub the insides of his nose with Vicks. He said, otherwise you'll probably faint. So he did, and he was all right. And what they did in there, he said that the worst bit was when they sawed the top of the skull off and took the brain out. And he said he was really shocked because he thought that they would put everything back where it came from, and they don't. They literally throw everything into the cavity, the chest cavity afterwards. So the brain went in there as well. It was like everything was just chopped up and shoved in.
I mean, I've never viewed anything like that. So part of me, I mean, I used to have a little bit more of a weaker stomach before I started things, but now I almost have this odd curiosity to where I'd almost want to like find out if I could handle it in some respects. I mean, and not that I think I'm close at all to doing anything like that, but it's just there's just a part of me that's like, because my brother, he was initially gonna go for like some medical courses and stuff like that, and he had to watch this surgery. I forget if it was like open heart surgery or what it was in high school. And he told me there were a bunch of people that like had to like leave, like had to leave the room, had to, you know. I'm like, yeah, I wonder if that would have been me, been me.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know.
the nearest we had to that at school was eyeballs. I remember we was in biology class and the teacher came in and he had a tray and he just plonked this tray in front of me and it was just a whole tray of cow's eyes just staring, you know. That was really
Yeah,
grim.
yeah.
Oh, Emily said some colleges actually have cadavers in various forms of decomposition in various areas.
Ah,
Is this like that
yes.
garden thing where, and then they monitor what insects are on them so they can work out how long somebody's been dead for?
Yes, yes. I think the one of the farms, sorry, I just have to switch.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's actually a farm, I think it's in Tennessee, I think that they do that there.
Wow.
I forget what it's called though. Um, but
I
yeah.
think I saw a documentary on it. So, she's saying yes. So it is that. Yeah, because I don't know who it was. A British guy went over and they showed it on the TV and they just put I think we call it tarpaulin. I don't know whether you call it the same, but they just put like a plastic sheet over the top of the
Yeah.
bodies. But they were allowed to just decompose, and they had them at different stages. And people could leave their bodies to that. So if you
Yeah.
died, you could put it in your will that you
Yep.
wanted that to happen. Um,
Yep.
which is like, just showing this Mary. Hi, Neil and Morgan. Heard about you from my sister, a fantastic knitter and fan of Blocked. I'm assuming is she the fantastic knitter, or is she saying Morgan's a fantastic knitter, or a sister? I don't know.
I don't
Off
know.
from work and watching your pod. Well, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, if you got the chance, would you like to watch like an autopsy or do you call it autopsy in America, or do
Yeah.
you have a different name? Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Would you like to watch it?
Maybe. I mean, I mean, I suppose I could start watching it, and then if I'm like, nope, nope, you know, can't do it, because it's sort of one of those things now where if like I were to watch it, okay, like I'm not in a classroom, you know, it's not like required of me to watch it. So if I'm like, okay, nope, can't do it, you know, click, you know, and then that's it. You know, I know, yeah, maybe I'm not ever going to be cut out for anything like that, but you know,
Well, there was a guy,
maybe,
I've forgotten his name, he was German, and I'm sure he was world famous, but must be 10, 20 years ago, I don't know. But he did a whole thing where he was plasticizing bodies and then cutting them apart and then displaying them in all around the place. But he did a few live autopsies on TV here, very late though. They
wow,
had to have a million
yeah,
warnings, and I did watch one of them, but I have to say it was there was absolutely no feeling of sensationalism. Do you know what I mean? Because when I was
yeah,
watching it, I was kind of a bit like, "Ooh, going to watch an autopsy," but then actually watching it, it felt very sad. Do you know what I mean? It
yeah,
kind of felt
yeah.
that feeling was like, "Oh, this is real. This is a real person." You know? Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think when I was going through a couple of my criminal justice courses, especially the one where we, you know, again learned what, you know, various, you know, wounds would potentially look like, you know, learning about, you know, splatter, you know, learning, you know, just all of those kinds of things. You know, you know, a while ago I would have not been able to handle it, but I think it's one of those things where you kind of learn to, and maybe separate yourself from it is too harsh or too, you know, don't know, but in my mind at least, I kind of just had a way of kind of separating myself from what I was looking at so that it wasn't something that bothered, you know, that, you know, either, you know, grossed me out or, you know, bothered me, and I just kind of took it all in. You know, it just didn't really, it's kind of weird. Like I don't know how to describe it really, but it just, I mean, and maybe it was because I was getting a grade in the class that I was like, all right, you just, you know,
Yeah, just
deal
do
with it
it.
and move on, you know, but, you know.
And they just confirmed it is
Oh,
University of
yeah,
Tennessee, and they call it the Body Farm.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
Anne's just giving you a suggestion here. You could always ask someone if they, to watch an autopsy and use your current degree as an excuse, saying you might want to switch to be a forensic pathologist.
You know, I've thought about going back to school, but then every time I think about it, I'm like, nope, nope,
Well,
nope,
that
nope,
means
nope.
don't do it then, doesn't it? If that's your, there must be
Well,
what's
I
putting you
mean,
off going back.
because, well, I don't want to add any more to my loans that I've got to pay back. You know, I just don't want to do that. And, you know, as much as I enjoyed online learning, there was a lot of parts of it that still were kind of, you know, so like, for example, I had to take a stats class, and we had to get, you know, this software, you know, to do, you know, the various, you know, different kinds of programs and stuff like that. And the tutorial on how to use the software was filmed using Windows XP, and the software version that they were using was like 5 previous, like, versions. And they're like, "Here you go, this is how you do this." And when a lot of us, like, complained and basically said, "Well, how are we supposed to figure this out when it's Windows XP?" Like, it's nowhere near, like, and the professor basically just said, "Go on YouTube and figure it out." And I'm like, I'm paying thousands of dollars to be told to go on YouTube?
Yeah,
Like,
the F, we used to call it when I was teaching. It was the FOFI, they called it. F. So fuck
yeah,
off, find out. Fofo, sorry, Fofo.
yeah,
Fuck off and
yeah.
find out. Yeah, God.
I I mean that to me just really rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, why am I paying this money to essentially to go teach myself how to do something? Like, I can do that for free. You know, I don't need to pay all this money for you to tell me just to go on YouTube.
Well, it's funny because just to bring this sort of back to knitting a little bit,
Yeah.
back I can't remember when it was now, but I got it into my head that I wanted to do the master knitting course, and
Mhm.
I looked into it. I even bought the course, so I
Oh,
paid the
did you?
money to the oh, I forgot what they're called now, the American one, because there was one in Britain which worked out that it was like £1,000 per like semester in,
Okay.
even though you're doing it online, it's not really
Yeah.
semester. Whereas the American one was a lot cheaper and was actually more widely recognized. I think it was £150, which is what, I don't know what that is in American dollars, about
Yeah.
$180 maybe. So I did pay for the first semester and got the information through, and I just thought to myself, this is not going to make me a master knitter, and I thought,
Right.
what will make me a master knitter is just knitting,
Yeah.
and learning as much as you can at home. I don't enough other people. And it kind of dawned on me that what we are all doing in the knitting world by doing these shows and by having groups that, we are kind of, I know people say the hive mind and all that, and I get that, it's the same thing, but we are kind of at knitting university, all of us,
I
and
mean, yeah.
so it kind of feeds into what you're saying. It's like, yeah, you get to a certain point with education where you can learn yourself, where you can teach yourself. And if you really want to do something, you could do it all yourself anyway. And you just
Well,
don't get that bit of paper, do you? That's the only
well,
problem.
right. And, you know, for me, I don't know why, but I had it in my head leaving high school. I had a very different impression of what college was going to be like. I don't really know what gave me that different impression or why I thought it was so, but really, I mean, all my life people were like, it's so important to get a college degree. It's so important to get a college degree. And not that I don't entirely disagree with that, but there's a big part of me now that does disagree with that, because I had it in my head leaving high school. I thought, oh, I'm gonna meet so many new people. I'm gonna, and really about 90% of the ideas that I had of what college was gonna be like wasn't was not that way at all.
Yeah, I
And,
found
you
that,
know,
yes, I did meet a lot of people, but I met a lot of people that I didn't want to meet again.
well,
You know?
right. Well, right. And, frankly, I mean, beyond having classes together or, maybe the occasional, club that, you join to do stuff, that's about it.
Yeah.
It's not, and, my parents for, the, longest time were like, well, it doesn't matter what your degree's in, just as long as you have one, and then, you'll be good to go. Well, sorry to say,
Mm,
but like in my experience, that's not how it's been at all. I mean, I get that I haven't been out in the job market very long, but I
yeah,
I,
you're
I
right. You're
personally
absolutely
don't
right.
believe that. I personally don't believe that like that's the case
Well, are your
anymore.
parents around my age, would you say?
No,
Uh,
they're in the early. Well, let's see. My dad's about to be 50, and then my mom's in her early 50s.
Right. So I'm probably a little bit older than them. But so we're kind of in the same generation. So when
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
young, if you had a degree, so, in the 80s and 90s, you just got the job. You would get
right.
that job just for having a degree,
Yeah.
and there were certain roles that were sort of exclusively kept for people with
Mm-hmm.
degrees. Certain management roles, for example, you could only
Right.
have if you had a degree. It didn't matter what your experience was. Whereas now, I would say you're absolutely right. A degree is not going to help you get a job unless it's something very specific in a very specific niche area.
Yep.
Whereas years ago, you could just do any degree and it
Yeah.
would help you.
Well, and that was my dad's story, all the time to me when, I was, either annoyed with school or, whatever. It was always, well, my degree's in this, and look what I've been
Mm.
doing for the last 20 years, and it's like, okay, but that's not how it is anymore. Like, and the
Yeah.
whole experience thing, it drives me up a wall. They're like, okay, we want at least, required a minimum of 3 years experience and blah, 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 blah. It's like, I've been in school the whole entire time. How where do you think I would have been getting this experience from? Like, I mean, I understand that a degree doesn't necessarily give you the experience. I get that. But it's like, wha how am I supposed to get experience freshly out of college when, I just got this degree? Like,
Yeah.
what am I
It's
supposed to be
almost
doing?
like if it was more, I don't know whether the American medical degrees are the same as they are here, but you tend to do a semester in the hospital, a semester
Yeah,
in the
it's similar here.
classroom, or
Yeah.
variations of that. So it's
Mhm.
almost like every kind of degree needs to have that on the
Yeah.
job aspect to it, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're right. How do you get the experience? Because like I remember doing when I did my teaching qualification. Um, I was doing that was a semester. Oh no, it wasn't. How did we do it? I think we did 2 days in college and then
Mhm.
2 days in the actual classroom teaching, and even that didn't give enough experience to then get a job straight after. I was just lucky to
Right.
get one.
Right.
There's a lot of people that still don't get that job, and that's teaching, and they're desperate for teachers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would advise anybody now, if I had a child who was leaving school, I would say get a trade.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
a trade, because you can
Yeah.
always do a degree later. And if you get a
Yeah.
trade, you could save up some money, and as long as you've got something to fall back on, to
Yep.
do that you could do to earn money, because a lot of the degrees now are pretty useless.
Well, and
Especially, I mean,
even
Madonna. There's a degree in bloody Madonna. What's that about?
what?
Yeah, yeah.
Do I even wanna know? Do I even want to know? That's my new phrase that I'm getting to the point of where I'm like, "Do I even want to know anymore?" Because it's just it's like, it's
Wow, to be this jaded at 24, what are you going to be like when you're twice that age?
I don't know. That's what kind of scares me sometimes. And I'm like, oh Lord, like I'm already just kind of over it, now. It's like, you know, but it's funny because I have to explain a lot of things to my mom, especially. She's just like, oh Lord help me. Just it's just insane. It really is. And then it makes me, because I have two younger brothers, and it's like just thinking about what it's going to be like, especially for the youngest one. It's like,
How old is he now then? What is he still at
uh,
school or has he left
yeah,
school?
yeah.
Yeah.
So one brother is 20, and the other brother is 11.
Oh, right. Oh, he's got a way
Sad
to
I had
go
to
yet.
think about that
Yeah.
for a moment. Um, but yeah, it just makes me think, like, you know, like, the world is already kind of at its, we're on the highway to hell,
Well, I think
literally.
at a certain point, and I think it was at the end of the 90s, at least here it was, where they kind of stopped realizing that there's different types of intelligence. There's academic intelligence, and there's
Oh,
street
yes.
smarts, and there's common sense intelligence, and there's, I don't
Yep.
even know what it's called, but there's I'll say 3D intelligence just for the want of another word. People who can do things in their mind and move.
Mhm.
People who are engineers and things like that.
Yeah.
And it should be just, if not more, um, prestigious to be a plumber or an electrician
Oh, yeah.
as it is to have a degree in English or whatever. Because
Right.
one is useful and the other one isn't really. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
because I used to
Yeah.
have students that were doing what we call apprenticeships, and they had to. The way it changed, they were gardeners, so all they wanted to do was be gardeners. And I had this one lad, and he was fantastic gardener. His boss came in to talk to me and say, "Look, he's brilliant. He doesn't need to write anything.
Yeah.
Why does he have to learn how to write a formal letter?" And I said, "Well, he doesn't, but he has to. It's part of the framework that he can't pass without
See,
it." And it was so sad because he couldn't read or write.
well, and, like, there are certain things in school that I agree with, that I mean, there are tons of things that even in college I didn't learn how to do, that I'm, like, sitting here now going, "Boy, that would have been nice if I would have learned that." Like, so now sitting here now trying to, like, figure it out and being like, I don't know, maybe I'm doing this right. It's just very, very interesting, and, like, in high school too, there were a lot of things that, once I got to college, it was like, they wanted certain things, written in, either like, APA, and
Oh yeah.
there were certain things that, like, we just didn't learn how to do in high school, and I'm like, boy, in English class, it would have been nice if we would have learned how to do this. So, getting to college, I'm not like YouTubing how to format, a table of contents and what's the thing at the end?
Bibliography and
Not not that appendix. I'm like, it
oh
would have
yeah.
been nice if someone taught me how to, do this.
And also the other thing, I mean, I did a degree and I did a master's as well, and I did them at two different universities, and they had
Yeah.
a different requirement. So I'd already learned one set, and I was really confident, thinking, "Oh, I know how to do this now." And
Oh
the first
no.
essay that I handed in, basically, I'd used the wrong one because there's like two main ones in this country,
Oh
and I'd used the
God.
wrong one. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, so then I had
that's
to go and
just
learn that. It's like, oh, pointless.
heartbreaking. Yeah, well, and for a while, I think early into college, I thought, yeah, I'd maybe go get my master's. Sure. After I mean, I was so ready to be done, because then by that point, I think I had been in 6 years, and I just
Mm,
thought, and the advisor that I had at the time, she was kind of concerned with how many credits I was taking online, and she was trying to essentially get me to, like, stretch out to, like, another semester, and I said no. I said, I'm finishing it now. I'm not, and she had basically said, well, what's wrong with pushing it off another semester? I'm like, let's see, money, time, my sanity, like,
Yeah, when I was at
you
uni,
know,
there was an American girl, Annie from Ohio. That's how I remember. And Annie
yeah,
from Ohio. And it was cheaper, less expensive for her to come all the way over to the UK and study here
really
than it was to do it at home in Ohio. And that
insane.
was then though. So I don't know what it is now. It could be
Yeah,
different now.
yeah.
But that was kind of crazy. And you just think, what's going on?
Well, and the whole student loan thing, I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie and say that if the money's offered to me, like I'm taking it.
Is it the same as here, though? Is it you have to earn a certain amount before you have to pay anything back?
Oh no, so see, once your sort of 6-month grace period, and granted, it's different here now because Biden's been extending the pause on the payments. So I think I'm actually due to start paying in October, actually. And but who knows if by that point he'll extend it again or what. But you typically have like a 6-month grace period after you leave school. And then you have to start paying it, whatever the payment amount is. Now you can adjust it. They have like different things you can do to like adjust the payment based on your income.
Right.
But I think that depends on. I'm not sure if that depends on how much you have out in loans already or how that works. I actually probably need to start exploring it. But
Yeah, October will soon be here.
tick tick. But it's one of those things where they keep talking about how they're gonna, get rid of, so much, in student loan debt. And do I think it's really gonna happen? No. However, for when it first came up, I kind of had this little like moral debate kind of within myself of being like, well, should I take the money? I think it's not like I don't agree with the policy of them doing this. But then I thought, I mean,
But to get that education, you have to do it, don't you? How else would you have done it? That's the thing.
well, exactly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, and so I kind of went back and forth for a while. And my mom, even we were kind of talking about it, and she's like, "Well, you'd be a fool to not take that money and have 20 grand off of your loans, taken off." Now I'm kind of in a fortunate position where I didn't have as
Oh, I
much
see what
student
you mean.
loans.
Ah, right. I was thinking
Yeah,
something. Right, I'm
yeah.
with you now. Yeah, I'm with you.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So she's like, "You'd be a fool to not take that money," and I'm like, "Yeah, I
Yeah, if it's
know,
offered, take it.
but I also don't agree with the principle of it either." And she's like, "Yeah, but you're gonna have like 20 grand potentially knocked off of your loan," and I'm like, yeah. So for a while I kind of went back and forth, and I think I would do it if it was offered. Do I think it's gonna happen? No.
Well,
Like, I
I
don't think
I
it's
know
gonna
what you're
happen.
saying there because it's kind of like, does it go against your own personal morals? Doesn't it? Is like your ethics.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, your mum's right. It's like, yeah, you can hold two positions. You can
Right.
think it's wrong, but then at the end of the day, you know what you've got to do to survive personally
Right.
and get through.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
wouldn't worry, about. I just want to show this as well. Tanya, I'm almost 50 and I am only 20 hours from getting my bachelor's degree, but I decided it just wasn't worth it. So many useless classes that cost too much. I
Yep.
encourage my kids to go to a trade school. Wow, in
Yep.
20 hours, that's nothing, is it? Wow.
I mean, I was so ready to be done, and it was kind of, disappointing because I again had this different idea of what college was going to be, and it just I was so over it by the end. I didn't necessarily always mind, writing the papers and doing things like that, but it was just the thing of, I want to get on with my life. You know, I want to have more control over my life than having to always worry about, okay, I've got an assignment due this, this Sunday. I've got this due this day. That, it just got to a point where I'm like, I'm done doing this. So I don't know
Yeah,
if I'll ever go back,
you've got to go
honestly.
back to the real world at some point, haven't you? Because it's definitely
Yeah.
a strange environment, I think, university and college. I kind of liked it when I was there. I have to admit I did, but at the same time, there were aspects of it that I didn't like. When I did
Yeah.
I did a master's in English literature, and that was weird because I did it in Brighton, which is a seaside town,
Hmm.
and I what we only had to go in for 2 hours a week. you know, for our, I can't remember what you called them now, where you just sat around and chatted about whatever.
Yeah.
And but we had to read 6 books a week. So
That'd be really hard for me to do.
It's kind of ruined my reading of anything
Yeah.
since. But what I used
Yeah.
to do, when it wasn't too cold, I used to walk down to the beach and just sit on
Mhm.
the beach with all these books and just sit there all day reading them. But the problem I had was that I used to get them mixed up. So we'd be in a seminar talking about a
Oh,
particular book, and I'd be talking about characters that weren't even in that book,
they're in
but
that
they were in
book.
another book. But yeah, it was yeah, I hated the reading of that, and it's like, you know, that was the whole point of that course, was to read, you know, and
Yeah.
I can barely read a book now. I just can't concentrate to do it.
And, you know, I was sort of the same way. I mean, as a kid, I would read a lot. It's like, I mean, I had my face buried in, you know, in books growing up, and now it's like well, it's the fact that I love to knit so much that anytime I'm sitting somewhere, I'm, you know, knitting, and so
Yeah,
I
whereas you
haven't
would have
quite
been reading, probably.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, where I haven't quite taught myself yet how to, you know, read and
do
knit at the
both.
same time yet, but DK actually got me hooked on, JK Rowling's, you know, true
Ah, yeah.
crime, you know, and so I
Oh,
got the
the
audiobook.
podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Yeah, I've
It
listened to that.
yeah, yeah, so I'm on, The Cuckoo's Calling right now. I think I've
Oh,
got a
sorry.
good
You mean again? I'm getting confused. You mean
oh,
her novels, don't you?
pseudonym, yeah,
Yeah.
I can
I
never
thought you
remember
meant
the pseudonym.
I thought you meant the witch trial podcast.
I need to
Ah,
listen to that yet
yeah,
too.
that's good. I've
Yeah,
not read any of. I've only read the Harry Potter books. I've not read any of her
I
other
have
books.
too, yeah.
So I might get an audio book then and try an
Do
audio
it.
book.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good so
Do you
far.
find though that you can concentrate on an audio book? Because
Yeah,
when I've tried in the past, my mind starts to wander. You know,
that that sometimes happens to me. I mean, I guess it kinda depends on just how I guess how the day in general's gone, you know, if there's just been a lot to think about or a lot to sometimes it can be a bit hard, but, like, I'll have it on, you know, while I'm cleaning or cooking or, you know, knitting, you know, just, you know,
yeah.
while I'm doing things that I can really then just focus on the book, but, like, as soon as someone, like, turns to talk to me, like, I've gotta, like, pause it, you know, like, right, because then that'll be too much of a, you know, distraction for me to, you know, and
So
then I'll
is that
forget.
how you made that mistake on the cowl pattern, because you were listening to a book?
Maybe. I don't know what I was doing. I just I laugh at that and then the hat where I'm, like, doing the knit 2 together. I'm like, "What the hell am I doing?" Like, I'm like, "God, I feel stupid. I've been knitting for how long?" And I just realized I'm not doing my knit 2 togethers the way they're supposed to be.
Well, if it's any consolation, for the first year of my knitting, I didn't know that I was knitting twisted knit stitches. And
Oh,
when it came to to knitting, so if I was doing
yeah.
stockinette, the knits were always really hard to do, and I used my finger bled because it was that hard, and I ended up with calluses on
Oh,
my foot. But I thought
oh
that
my
that's how it was, and I remember talking to someone and said, "Oh yeah, I love knitting." I said, "But I just can't stand knitting when it's stockinette stitch." And
yeah,
they were like,
stockinette, yeah.
"Why?" And I said, "Yeah, because it hurts so much. It's so hard
Really?
anyway. It shouldn't be hurting. You can't be doing it right."
That's not normal.
Yeah, and I was just wrapping it round the wrong way. You know, instead of, I can't even do it in my mind now. I was wrapping it that way
Yeah,
instead of that way. But oh, are you a thrower or a continental knitter? I always ask this.
continental.
Ah, so you're a looser knitter then, are you, or not? I can't remember. Have we
See,
chatted about
I
that?
don't know. I think you and I have somewhat similar gauge some because I do notice that when I am knitting continental, I do tend to sometimes after I knit the stitch or purl it or you know whatever, I do tend to like tug on it a bit
Ah,
after it's come off. Um, so I think I think your gauge might still be a little bit tighter than mine, but like typically I don't have to like go down needle sizes
right.
when with your patterns at all, really.
Oh, that's good, because I know Tabitha. She's a continental knitter, and
Yeah,
like whenever she knits anything of mine, it comes out 17 times too big because she's obviously a lot looser.
yeah,
But yeah, it'd be interesting to know whether she does the after stitch tug, if that's what the
yeah.
way
I
to
don't
describe it.
know. Yeah, it just, it's like I'll, knit the stitch and then especially if it's stockinette, because I don't know why in my mind I think like, okay, I'll tug on the stitch a little bit just so it's not like because I think, oh, it'll look all neat and like that's why with like color work sometimes I do have to go up like a needle size because I'll just be inadvertently like tugging things too tight, and then the color work bit's all
Yeah.
like squished in, and it's like, oh, that didn't work.
I'll tell you what we need to do. We need to get you onto the knitting wars. So if Anne, if you're
Yes,
still in the chat,
I'd love
we
to.
put Morgan down on the list because I think we need to get you to do your speed test. See how
I
fast
did it
you are.
one time. I think it was after you guys had done it the first or second time or something. I had my boyfriend time me. I'm
Oh,
like,
go on. What was it?
I think it was like 38 or something, I think.
Oh, faster than
But,
me.
I, I gotta practice now. Get prepared.
Yeah. So Tabitha's got nothing to be afraid of then just yet.
No.
Well, I think we're coming up for 2 hours now, so I think
Holy cow.
we'll wrap it up because I'm getting really hungry and it's 7 p.m. So it's well over my tea time. So
Yeah, well, call back whoever called twice. So
what have you got? Sorry, say that again.
well, I was gonna say I gotta see who called me twice and
Oh yeah,
call
somebody
back.
wants you. Somebody's desperate to call you. Right, so I just want to say thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was so much fun.
And Morgan, you have been blocked.